Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. So this time we're going to be talking about float ledgering, and specifically with the Polaris float. Okay, that's the one with the thing called a Friction device, which I'll show you a bit more about in a second. But not only are we going to be fishing with the Polaris float, we're also down at the bottom end going to be fishing with a feeder. Now I've actually got a bomb on at the moment because I've just been sort of getting myself set up out there to decide exactly where I'm going to fish. And it's about 18 feet deep. So of course you can't fish 18 feet deep with a normal waggler rod. You could do it with a sliding float, certainly, and you could also just chuck a feeder out there. But today, as I say, we've effectively got what is this Polaris float is effectively a sliding float. As you can see, slides up and down on the line, but then when there's any tension on it, it locks. And then when you release the tension, it just releases and slides up and down the line. As far as the terminal tackle goes, we'll talk a bit more about it later, but it's just your basic twizzle boom. Hear the kookaburras? Noisy, aren't they? Twizzle boom to a 14 hook and a hair rig. So, as I say, we'll go into a bit more detail about that in a second. So, why have I chosen this today? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is that just down in front of me here, there's a lot of weed that grows up from the bottom. And it also goes a little bit further out as well. So basically, this will be on the bottom. This will be the feeder, of course. The float will come up to 18 feet. And then when I put some tension on it with the rod top, it'll lock in position. And I'll trim the float tip to the usual sorts of height. Now, obviously what that means is that my main line is almost vertical. It won't be quite vertical. And again, we'll go into that a little bit later. And what that means is that all these strands of reeds that are growing up from the bottom are going up with it. If I was using a feeder rod, the feeder would be down on the bottom and the line would be coming back along the bottom. And it just means I could end up with more possibilities for a snag on those reeds down there. Of course, the other thing is, with the feeder line coming back towards you, you could have the possibility of carp, because I'm going to be catching carp here today, maybe some mullet. But the possibility of carp with their fins hitting off the line and creating liners, we all know about liners. And of course, with it being a vertical line, there's less likelihood of that. And of course, the third thing is that some people just like to watch you float. And today, as I say, we're in about 18 feet of water. And I know we're in 18 feet of water because I put the deeper fish finder out there some time ago, one of these devices, put it on your rod, cast it out, and then the app on the phone shows you what the depth is. And basically we've got a marginal shelf just here, then it just slides away down to 18 feet, levels off. Further over there it probably does go quite a bit deeper, but for quite a ways I've got 18 feet. And we're just at the end of winter now. Got my shorts on, as you can see, but I've still got the heavy duty top on because it's still a bit chilly. But really not quite sure what to expect, and therefore going to take it a bit easy. So I've already done the depth by casting this in, but just for the sake of argument, I'll show you how this works. All I'm going to do is, you can see how the thing's locked on the line. I'm just going to cast out there we go. Just allow it to hit the bottom. It's nice and calm today, so I'm not too worried about sinking the line just yet. Right, I felt that hit the bottom. Now I'll give it some line. Now if you are getting a drag on the water, just flick it up like that and that'll sink the line for you. But now that float's going to travel up through the water column to the surface, and when it gets there, I'm going to trim the tip. It's going to take a while, by the way. It can easily take sort of 13, 14, 15 seconds this to come up. And anytime now, there it is there, just out there. You won't be able to see it at the moment because I haven't got the zoom camera set up, but basically that's come up and that took at least 15 seconds. So now we're on the bottom, float's on the top. I'm just going to use the reel to just trim the thing down so it's just in the right position, and then we're off to the races. Okay, that's how simple it is. I'll go into some more detail later on, as I said, about all the different rigs and things, but I want to get fishing. So here we go. Look, I've reeled in and it's locked up at the rod tip. Don't worry, the little Still got caught on that reed down there, in this case a stick, but as you can see, by reeling in, it allowed the float to go down the line, and it doesn't actually damage the line or kink it or anything. Well, not appreciably anyway. So if I just do this, you can get that to a point where you can now cast in again. That's it. While we're actually talking about the float itself, let me just show you the device. This is what they call a fix-on device. It's got 2 holes, one that side, one that side. The smallest hole is for lines up to 6 pounds. The biggest hole, I think, goes up to 20 pounds. You thread it through, it goes through a spiral, comes out the bottom, and that's how it locks it off. In all other respects, it's a pretty similar float to anything else. So that's the Polaris float. There is another one that does the same job called a lock slide. Slightly different device at the bottom, but hey, does the same job. So look, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put a feeder on, and I'm going to get out there. I'm going to try, first of all, and just use this 20 gram smallish feeder, see how we go, but I may need more. Oops, come on then. Okay. Got all the usual baits. I got sweet corn, got different pellets, got some wheat, got some hemp, and so on. I'm going to start off with a couple of bits of sweet corn, but let's just get out there and start fishing, get a bit of bait in the water. And grab some pellets, bit of wheat, bit of sweet corn, bit of hemp, and we'll put that in and have a go at fishing. I'm going to put 3 or 4 of these in to start off with. As I say, it is still technically winter here, although looking at the weather at the moment, I'm sure you guys in the UK wouldn't imagine that. Anyway, here we go. Got a marker on the far side. That looks about right. I'm going to let it hit the bottom. It's going to take a bit longer this time because obviously we've got the feeder on. And there we go, it's just hit the bottom. Told you it was deep, didn't I? So now, give it a flick. Not too worried about dislodging the bait, obviously, because it's on the bottom in the right place. We'll let some line out, float will come up, and we're fishing. So, I'll get some bait in, and we'll get back to you just after that to continue. Okay, I've got 3 or 4 in. I've got a newly filled feeder, and this time I'm actually going to go for a proper cast. Now I'm actually clipped up, and I wouldn't recommend that if you're fishing for carp. I'll explain what I'm doing in a minute. There we go, that's hit the clip. And what I'm going to do is, while that's dropping, I'm just going to take up the slack line and allow it to drop through the water. Obviously it's doing that, and it's going to take 18 feet, probably at least 10 or 12 seconds to hit the bottom. So when the tip goes slack, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some line off the reel, so that'll allow the float to come up. Remember, it locks in position when there's a little bit of pressure on it. So I've sunk the line by putting the rod tip underwater and allowing it to go down under pressure. So now all I'm doing is just, I wouldn't do it quite like this, this is just for show. I'm just allowing some line to come out. You'll see it's taking the line because the float buoyancy is taking it off. Don't recommend that you backwind generally because that can lead to tangles. There it is, and yep, it's just come up on the, whoops, don't do that. There it is. Just trimming the tip with the reel so I can just see the normal amount of float sticking out. And yep, looking like we're getting this down here on the camera. Okay, so just to explain them, I've cast out, I've hit the clip, and the reason I've hit the clip, as I said, is because I need to get the float coming up on camera. I wouldn't recommend it if you're carp fishing, because if you're on the clip and you've only got 1 or 2 turns worth of slack line, if you like, or the spare line, you're liable to get busted off. So not necessarily a great idea unless you've got one of the MAP reels with the automatic clip system, which I mention almost every time I go out, so I won't bore you with the details. Oh, just need to trim that tip again. I just sort that out. So that's the way I'm doing it, and as you've seen, in such a great big depth of water, it does take a while for everything to occur, so don't rush, just take your time. Oh, make sure your tip's under the water as well, because obviously you don't want any drag pulling the float under. Okay, so finally all set up then with the cameras and ready to go. Just now waiting for fish to turn up, and we'll gauge our feed based on how it goes. Let's just talk a little bit more about tackle, and the rod I'm using is a 12-foot Daiwa Yank and Bank. It's actually the pellet waggler version, so it can cast reasonably heavy weights. In actual fact, I don't think it really matters what rod you use. Sorry, I'm watching the float as well as talking to you. As long as it can cope with the casting and retrieving of fairly heavy end tackle. I mean, say fairly heavy, it is for this sort of rod. We're not using a feeder rod, so I've got a 20-gram feeder on, and plus the weight of the float and so on, I've probably got somewhere close to 30 grams all in all. I thought I saw that move then. No, 30 grams all in all. So as long as your rod can cope with it, obviously I don't think it really matters whether it's 10 feet, 11 feet, 12 feet, 13 or 14 feet, or even 15 feet, because the float does the work for you. You couldn't fish in 18 feet of water with a normal waggler, as I said before. Yeah, you could do it with a slider, but that's for another day. So, as I say, as far as the rod goes, as long as it'll cope with the casting and the fishing itself. I don't see any reason why you couldn't use a feeder rod with, say, a 3-ounce tip in the thing just to stop it being too tippy, but, you know, it is what it is. Reel wise, again, I've just got a 4000 size reel on. As always, this happens to be the MAP Carptech 4000 FD. Reel line is actually 6 pounds Guru drag line, which is 0.25mm in diameter, because we do have a lot of snags in our waters down here, and including a lot of rocks, and of course the weed or reeds, as you've seen before. Hook length is an 0.22, and I think that is the Matrix sinking mono. Seeing things again. As far as the rig goes, at the bottom end, the cage feeder side of things, you're just looking at the standard setup for any cage feeder with a twizzled boom. I've done a number of videos on that, so just go into the playlist if you want to see how to set one up, and you'll find what you need there. Bait wise, I've got ground bait and a load of different particles, which I may or may not use yet. We'll have to wait and see. I've actually bought some chickpeas with me, which I might try a bit later. But really, now it's just about enjoying the day. Been in for a few minutes, and obviously nothing yet. Remember, this is a natural water, and it's actually a river, would you believe? Although it's dammed up further down. And look at that, there's the amount of depth we've got, and by just pulling it down like that, I can get to a manageable distance. Get some more bait in the feeder, bit of everything in the feed. Not going mad. I've not got a big feeder on, not like some of the ones I do normally have. Managed to catch me shorts. It's a fairly small feeder, so just going to put feed in at relatively regular intervals for the first, I don't know, 40 minutes to an hour or so. And hopefully that'll start to bring the fish in. If this was summer, I'd have been putting a lot more bait in. And remember, you can always feed with a catapult or throw it in yourself. So hit the clip, rod right back, and then just take up the slack. Don't take up the slack to the point where you're pulling the feeder in. All you're doing is literally taking up that slack from up there down to there. Wait for it to sink. Sinking the line, as we said before. You'll feel when it's hit the bottom. Line is just sinking now, and that's it done, and that was still there. Okay, just hit the bottom then. So let's put that in the rest and just pull the reel backwards until such time as the float comes up. There we go, there's the float. Yep, just got it on the camera. And with a bit of luck, yep, I've got a fair bit sticking out so the camera can see it, but the carp really don't care about that. But really, we're off to the races. We've just got to get a bite now. It's been out there a few minutes, so I'm going to feed again, because as I've said many times in the past, it's all natural venues over here. You need to get some bait in to bring the fish on. But if you look at the float coming in now, you can see the sort of depth they're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 turns of the reel to get somewhere relatively comfortable. Okay, I'll get some more bait on. I've got plenty in the feed at the moment, so we'll go with that. And just to go over the cast again, line up on the marker. Make sure you hit the clip if you're doing it this way, rod right back, and then take up the slack. Don't keep reeling in so you're pulling the feeder in. All you're doing is taking up that slack from where the rod was right up there to down there. Obviously, rod tip in the water, the feeder and everything else is sinking. That's pulling the line down with it and allow it to go to the bottom. And that line is now sunk. Looks like everything's on the bottom, so I'll put the rod in the rest and just start to, I'll show you here, just start to pull out line like that till the float comes up. And again, it's such a long way, 18 feet, that it takes a few pulls. As I mentioned previously, don't do it by back winding, you'll end up with a tangle if you do that. And we should be fairly soon seeing the thing coming up. Oops. Almost. Oops. Oh, there it is over there. Okay. I couldn't see what I was doing. But that's all you do, and then just trim the tip down so it's like that. Make sure it's being caught on camera. Always helps, just in case we get a bite, doesn't it? Well, that's a bite-ish kind of first indication I've had. It's just sunk down towards the tip and then came back up, so I'm going to wait for something a bit more positive. And nothing. We're about an hour in actually, and I haven't had a bite yet. As I say, that's the first indication. It is the end of winter. I am fishing in really deep water, so I'm just wondering if some of these fish are actually ready to spawn. I've had a few lately that are quite fat, full of spawn, so they may well have disappeared off to some shallow areas to go and do that, but you never know. And let's hope this time we can get a bite. Nice day though, eh? Glad I kept this on though, because it's actually a bit chilly still. Certainly didn't need to put any suntan lotion on. I'm in the shade here. You can see how much line I'm having to pay out. It's taking about 6, sometimes 7 goes at this before the float comes up. So it should be any time around now. definitely a bit of a bob then. Just get a bit more of the float sticking out so we can just be on the safe side. Not too worried about how much float's sticking out with this sort of method, guys. It's a bit like method feeder fishing. Yep, another little bubble. I think they're knocking into the feeder at the moment. They certainly aren't knocking into my bait. Oh. Straight underbite, just what I needed. Not a big fish, but first bite. And probably only a couple of pound fish, but straighten the reeds down there. Trying to avoid the zoom camera with the landing net. And in we go. Okay, well, there you go. So that's how you catch on the, whoops, I think I've just caught the camera, catch on the Polaris float ledgering. Now somehow I managed to get him in an awkward place, but he's probably only maybe 2.5, 3 pounds. Trying to avoid both cameras now. Okay, whoops, good start that way. And that actually was on one of those chickpeas. It's a turmeric flavoured chickpea. So I'll try that again. Rebaited, and off we go. Really straightforward stuff, isn't it? Cast out, hit the clip, make sure the rod's back, just take in some line, let it hit bottom with the tip of the rod underwater. It's going to take about 12 seconds, and then just let some line out, and away we go. As I say, if you're going to be doing it for carp, be a bit careful, especially if you're fishing in open water like this, because they can tear off and you really wouldn't want to break off. Any second now, hopefully. That thing should come up. It's a long way up from 18 feet down. There we are. Okay. Just trim the tip, trim the float. There we are. Right, see if we can get another one. You might have noticed when we got the bite, instead of doing this dunk, dunk, which was obviously liners, probably fish hitting the feeder, this time it just went straight away, and that was it. And I did mention before about being able to use almost any rod. Well, you can, as long as it'll take the weight, but also I wouldn't use too short a rod. I mean, try and get down to a sort of a 12-foot rod or longer. The thing is, once you're at 10 or 11 feet, it's picking up line, especially at 18 feet of depth. You need to be able to get that line pick up from the longer rod. Straight under again. Oh, come off. Ah. Ah, well. And go back to sweet corn again. That was what I had on that time. I've been ringing the changes, so bite again went straight under, didn't it? Maybe I should go to a 10 hook like I usually do. I was being circumspect today because obviously water's still cold, and I really wasn't sure how they were going to react. Still, turned out nice, didn't it? Hey, not quite sure what this is. Oh, doesn't feel like a carp. Could be, but what do I know? Well, this is a carp, I'm pretty sure now. Just strange when it first stuck, wasn't it? Just gonna watch that bank of reeds down in front of me. Right, as I said, just reel against the float. Won't damage anything. There we are. Just ease off a little as you do it, just be on the safe side, of course. And in we go. Easy peasy, eh? He's probably again similar sort of size. But nice fish though, isn't it? And good bite as usual. Well, that one came towards me, so I had to do a bit of reeling there. He's just cruising along the edge of those reeds. Come on, fish. Get out of them reeds. Get out of them reeds. As I say, just slacken off a fraction as you're reeling against a lot of pressure like this, because it will kink your line if you're not careful. Come on, out of the reeds. He wants to stay in those reeds, doesn't he? Come on, fish. I think we got him now. Yep. Mind you, you never know with these fish, do you? Hey. Bit bigger this one. Nicely in the lip. Think I'd get a barbless hook out, wouldn't you? Chuck that down there. He's not massive, obviously, but he's a chunky fish. Whoops. Right, this time, fish. All right, I give up. We're not showing you this one. We'll put him back. So, there you go then, folks. That's float ledgering in deep water with a Polaris or a lock slide float and a cage feeder. Obviously I was fishing for carp, but it works just as well for roach and skimmers and various other species too. And I think the thing here is that if you've got a venue near you which is very deep but you like to watch a float, why not give this one a go? Anyway, that's it for another one. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you did, click the like button. If you want to subscribe, that's great too. And of course, if you want to contribute, that's really good too. Thanks again. See you next time. Bye for now.